When my parents remarried, I gained a stepbrother. We were polite with each other, careful in the way strangers are when they're suddenly told their family. We didn't share childhood memories or inside jokes, just a quiet mutual respect. He kept to himself most of the time, and so did I. I already had a life outside this new family, friends, a boyfriend I'd been with for over a year, routines that didn't involve him. He wasn't unfriendly, just reserved, and I didn't expect that to ever change. At first, our interactions were small and forgettable. Passing each other in the hallway, exchanging a quick hey, sitting at the same dinner table in silence. But every now and then, he'd notice things others didn't. Like the time I came home shivering in the winter and he quietly left a folded blanket on the couch next to me. Or when I reached for a drink at a family barbecue and realized he'd already poured my favorite one without being asked. These weren't grand gestures, just small acknowledgments that said he was paying attention. My relationship with my boyfriend was steady but unremarkable. We weren't fighting, but there was a growing emptiness I couldn't name. He forgot small details about my day, barely asked questions about my life, and our conversations often drifted into comfortable but hollow silence. I told myself that's just what happens when you've been together a while, that love turns into routine. Still, there were moments when my stepbrother's quiet attentiveness stood out in sharp contrast. When I'd have a bad day, my boyfriend would text me a quick "sorry, babe," and leave it at that. But my stepbrother would linger in the kitchen a little longer, asking how I was and actually waiting for an answer. It felt strange to notice these things, stranger still to feel comfort in them. I didn't think too much about it at the time. We weren't close, but there was an unspoken understanding forming between us. Something that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't know it yet, but that quiet connection would change everything. My relationship was unraveling in ways I couldn't ignore. Birthdays, anniversaries, moments that should have mattered passed by like any other day. My boyfriend's excuses were always the same: too busy, too tired, too distracted. I stopped expecting him to remember the little things, but I didn't realize how much it hurt until someone else did. It started subtly. My stepbrother began checking in more often. He'd ask how work went, what I was reading, whether I'd eaten yet. His tone wasn't casual small talk, it was genuine interest. He remembered my answers, followed up days later. I told myself he was just being kind, but the truth was, I felt more noticed in those short exchanges than in hours spent with my boyfriend. One night, my boyfriend forgot an important dinner we had planned. I was left sitting alone, my phone lighting up with his last-minute apology. My stepbrother happened to be around, and without asking, he showed up with my favorite dessert from the bakery downtown. He handed it to me like it was nothing, but it wasn't nothing. Not to me. It was the kind of thoughtfulness I had been craving for months. I told myself it wasn't romantic. It couldn't be. He was my stepbrother, and we weren't supposed to have that kind of connection. But there was no denying how much I looked forward to hearing his voice in the hallway, the way my mood shifted when he was near. Late one evening, we ended up talking longer than we ever had before. It started with a simple question: how was I really doing? Not the polite version, but the truth. I admitted I was lonely even in my own relationship. He didn't try to fix it, he just listened. At one point, he said quietly, "I just want to see you happy. Even if it's not with me." I didn't know how to respond, but the words stayed with me long after. I was aware of the line between us. Aware of the risk in crossing it. But I also knew my boyfriend had stopped seeing me in the way that mattered, and my stepbrother hadn't. And that realization was becoming impossible to ignore. The day everything shifted began with another disappointment. My boyfriend had promised to be there for something important to me, something I'd been looking forward to for weeks. Hours before it was supposed to happen, he sent a short message canceling. No explanation, no attempt to reschedule, just an empty apology. I wasn't surprised anymore, but the familiar ache of being let down still hit hard. I had planned to spend the evening alone, trying to convince myself it didn't matter. But then, without warning, my stepbrother appeared with something I didn't expect, a plan. He told me he didn't like the thought of me sitting in silence on a night that should have been special. He had taken the time to prepare something meaningful, not out of obligation but because he wanted to. It wasn't grand or showy, but every detail was thoughtful in a way that reached past my defenses. He had remembered things I'd told him in passing, my favorite food, a song I loved but rarely admitted, small pieces of me that no one else seemed to notice. It wasn't about impressing me, it was about showing that I mattered. And in that moment, I felt like I truly did. As the evening unfolded, I found myself watching him differently. There was a quiet care in the way he spoke, an ease in how he made me laugh without trying. The kind of connection that didn't need to be forced. I realized that I hadn't felt this seen, this understood, in a long time. My gratitude tangled with something far more dangerous, an ache I didn't want to name. There was a moment when our eyes met and lingered just a second too long. It wasn't an accident. It was the unspoken acknowledgement that something had changed. My heart raced, and for the first time in months, it wasn't from sadness or frustration but from something I was afraid to feel. A touch on my arm lasted longer than it needed to, sending a current through me I tried to ignore. When the night ended, I thanked him, but the words felt insufficient. What he had given me wasn't just kindness, it was a reminder of what I'd been missing. And as I lay in bed later, I couldn't stop replaying every detail, knowing that nothing between us would ever be quite the same again.